Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Today I'm going to share my number one health tip, and I rarely bring this up in conversation. I only do it when I think we're ready to have a conversation hijacked because it tends to go that way. Like once I share this tip, people sort of freak out or they want to know more, they're curious. They think, why the heck do you do this, Leanne? And so I thought I'd share why I do it in this podcast episode today, especially because I've had over 9 hours of sleep. I had 9 hours and 5 minutes sleep last night. So I feel amazing. And I think this health tip has a lot to do with that. Before I jump in, I wanted to share a few shout outs to those of you that commented on LinkedIn about Leanne On Demand. Nathy shared, wow, it's a huge challenge. I cannot imagine doing a podcast episode every single day. Big challenge. Congrats on the first episode. Thanks so much. Alex shared a tip. He said, keep it simple. Make it a minimum of 5 minutes in length. Dr. Catherine Lloyd shared, Leanne, it's all about the why. Why did you decide to do this and undertake this project? What's motivating you? And if that's clear, then what can you standardize to make it easy to do? Matt Brady, awesome work. I'll be checking this out. Sarah Little, pre-record some episodes in case of travel, illness, or change of plans. Batch up episodes. And Alexander said, a podcast every day. I can't even commit myself to one post per day. Honestly, I think talking is a lot easier than writing. So, again, go with your strengths and what works for you. So, again, episode 3, I can't really give advice on how to do this just yet. I think once I'm sort of 90 days in, I might have some really cool systems and things to share in terms of how I have kept the streak going. Okay, end of last year, I was running a team session and we were just sort of connecting over some questions. And one of the questions that came up was, what is your number one health tip? And in the moment, I was like, I could share a couple. And so I'll quickly share those sort of runner-up ones. My runner-up health tips. One is from Andrew Huberman. And he says the first thing you do when you wake up is just try to get some light in your eyes. Sunlight obviously is the best thing to do that. If not, then just, regular light works if you're living in like the Northern Hemisphere and you don't get that much light early in the morning. Luckily in Brisbane, I don't know if it's lucky or not. Definitely, if I was to run for government, I would be running my platform on daylight savings. I reckon we need it in Queensland because I'm pretty much awake at like 4 o'clock every morning because of the birds, and that's when sunrise is really early, like 4:30 in the morning. So it's easy for me to wake up and get that natural light in my eyes. I'm not going to talk about that, but that's one of my tips. The second one I actually like from Tim Ferriss. It's very easy to remember. It's called 3-2-1 when it comes to getting a good night's sleep. So 3 hours before your bedtime, stop eating. 2 hours before your bedtime, stop drinking water. And 1 hour before your bedtime, put aside, just get off the phone and your stop all of that blue light. So that's Tim Ferriss's 3-2-1. What is the freak out tip? Well, I tape my mouth closed when I go to sleep. That's it. That's the tip. That's the grand reveal. I tape my mouth. And when I say that to people, they freak out. When I actually heard it, when my friend Tim Guinea said that he taped his mouth, I was like, that's absolutely crazy. Like, why would you tape your mouth to sleep? It sounds scary. It sounds it definitely sounds weird. But I have been doing it for the last 2 years. When I travel, the first thing I pack is my tape for my mouth. And I'll share why in a moment. But that's the confession. And before I continue, I just want to share that I probably should have a disclaimer on the show that everything I share, obviously seek your own medical advice before you start doing this. Read the books, and I'll share the links to the books that I've read about this before I started to do it. And yes, make sure that it resonates with you and your lifestyle. So super quick disclaimer there. Once Tim told me this, then I read the book by James Nestor. It's called Breathe. The New Science of a Lost Art. And it's an incredible book. Even if you are skeptical about this, the way that, James is a journalist. The writing is really great. It's really easy to read. It's probably a good summer read. He tells some really good stories in that really sort of back this up. But what I loved that he did is that he had an experiment for 10 days. So James Nestor did it, and Anders Olsen, who is a Swedish breathing expert. They both participated as guinea pigs in this study. For the first 5 days, both of them breathed exclusively through their mouths. And for the second 5 days, they switched to breathing exclusively through their noses. So the first phase, I think their noses were completely blocked with silicone plugs. And then the second, they just taped their mouths. So what they did was tracked various metrics such as blood pressure, heart rate variability, oxygen, and CO2 levels, sleep quality, cognitive performance, and physical performance. And I'll share just like some of the highlights from the first 5 days. I wouldn't say highlights, actually. These are probably lowlights. What's more interesting, though, is probably the qualitative story that James shares in his book, and just you can sense the agony that he goes through. It was really like unbelievable, like a dramatic deterioration in his health for the first 5 days. So increased snoring and sleep apnea. James's snoring increased from almost nothing to over 4 hours a night. Both of them experienced a noticeable rise in blood pressure. Nestor's levels reached a pre-hypertensive state. Decreased energy and cognitive clarity, both reported feeling sluggish, foggy, and less mentally sharp. Worsened physical performance. Workouts felt harder, recovery was slower. Breathing felt laboured during physical activity. Dry mouth and irritation. I mean, that sounds like horrific. Just in 5 days to get that data reported. Then they switched to nose breathing for the second 5 days, and their health rebounded. So reduced snoring and sleep apnea, lower blood pressure, improved energy, enhanced physical performance, better overall comfort. And this is also something that Patrick McKeown shares in his book called The Oxygen Advantage. So I'll link to both of these books in the show notes. I've listened to Patrick's book on Spotify, just through one of the audio books there. And yeah, I mean, he says the same thing. Like, so nose breathing is just superior to mouth breathing in terms of improved oxygen uptake, nitric oxide production, prevents overbreathing, optimizes your airway function, and just promotes healthy facial and airway development. That's really the argument for taping my mouth at night, because I don't want to breathe through my nose. And it's good to know that for, say, 7 to 9 hours every day, I am breathing properly through my nose as I go to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, like, just the improvements from doing this, I'm not as thirsty. I just feel better when I wake up. Even without looking at any sort of data or metrics, I just feel amazing. Just more relaxed, more refreshed when I wake up. And I try to continue this on through the day. It's interesting when I run workshops or events where I'm, or days where I'm in meetings a lot. At the end of the day, I definitely feel dehydrated. I feel tired. And I thought a lot of that was maybe the strain of focusing and everything else. But I think from reading Patrick McKeown's book as well, it's because I'm spending a lot of that day with my mouth open and not breathing optimally as well. So there's a lot of work I could do on my breathing in terms of what Patrick McKeown writes about in his book is having a BOLT score, which is a body oxygen level test. And my friend Tim, who I spoke about earlier, who shared with me that he tapes his mouth in the first place, he can actually go running. He can run long distance without breathing through his mouth. I'm not at that stage yet, but I can run at a slow pace for quite a while without opening my mouth. But when I do, like this morning, I did a fartlek run, which is a minute of running at your fastest 80%, then jogging for a minute, and then going back to 30 seconds on and off. I was in zone 5 for much of that, zone 5 fitness, and just had to breathe through my mouth. So yeah, definitely not there yet. It's all a work in progress, but I just think this taping my mouth has been the best thing. Now, what do I use? I guess when you say that, it conjures up these images of a hostage situation and duct tape. It's not like that at all. It's just 3M do a really nice, just white tape. It's about 8 millimeters wide and just one little strip, just vertical. And so in the case of in the middle of the night, if I need to grab a drink, I have a Frank Green drink bottle with a straw so I can actually sip water through the sides of my mouth if I need. I'm just getting really good at being a ventriloquist now if I need to say anything through the sides of my mouth and not have to get the tape off. And it's portable, the tape. It's like I said, it's the first thing I pack when I travel because I just feel I don't know, maybe it's part of my routine now when I go to sleep. It's tape up. Right, cool. Now I'm ready to fall asleep now. So I'm curious, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a bit weird? Are you willing to give it a go? Maybe read the books, maybe watch some YouTube videos, listen to James Nestor or Patrick McKeown. I think James is good if you like storytelling narrative. Patrick is more from the pure science perspective of it. If you're really looking at breathing from a performance point of view, yeah, check it out. But it's pretty phenomenal when you hear the stories and the case studies as well that underpins it. So is 2025 the year that you start taping up your mouth when you go to sleep? Let me know and I'll speak to you tomorrow.